Wait, hold on. We hear a voice coming back. Mine won't come back? Hello, I'm joining you from the Colorado Department of Transportation. I'm here with Colorado Department of Transportation Executive Director Shoshana Liu, who's with us virtually, joining us from Glenwood Canyon, with our Director of Public Safety for the state of Colorado, Stan Hilke, Chief Packard of the Colorado State Patrol. We're also joined virtually by Steve Harrelson, Colorado Department of Transportation's Chief Engineer, and John Lorne, Director of Maintenance and Operations, to answer any questions. I too was supposed to be joining folks in Glenwood Canyon today, but the choppers we were going to fly to do the aerial surveillance in can't fly right now because of hail and rain in the immediate area. I hope to be able to personally surveil the damage in the coming days or week. I was hoping to do that today. Look, this is a big deal what's happening with the mudslides in Glenwood Canyon. We all know Glenwood Canyon. It's majestic, beautiful, and of course a critical transportation route for our state, for commerce, for trucks, for tourists, for Colorado residents to access beautiful western Colorado. And when it comes to infrastructure, there's few parts of Colorado that are as important as the Highway 70 corridor. Given the historic wildfires that we experienced last summer, the three largest in the history of our state, we knew that we would see the severe impact that burn scars and debris can have on a landscape. In recent weeks, we've seen that near Fort Collins, where 3 people tragically lost their lives. Now, parts of Boulder County yesterday, and now here through Glenwood Canyon. Just to put in perspective the rain that we've been having, average monthly rainfall for Glenwood Canyon is 2.4 inches in July for the entire month. We had 4 inches drop in 5 days. So unusual monsoon rains on top of the burn scars and debris from the fires is the recipe that has led to the extensive damage and closures. Now, we all know over the last 5 weeks there's been intermittent closures. There's been debris slides. We've cleaned them up as quickly as we can, and I want to thank the Colorado Department of Transportation and their hard work. The men and women who went in there, got it open several times already. We now have even more extensive damage, including significant structural damage to the I-70 viaduct in multiple locations in Glenwood Canyon. We'll show a video in just a moment. And the monsoon weather patterns mean this threat is ongoing. Today's hail and rain could potentially lead to additional slides, and we're not out of the woods yet with regards to additional damage. We are taking immediate action to clear the damage, to rebuild as soon as possible. CDOT is working around the clock to clear the debris. One thing you'll hear is we won't be fully aware of the extent of the structural damage until some of the debris is cleared. There are areas that are under 10 feet or more of mud at this point, and until that can be removed, we won't know the exact state of some of the highways and access roads. This is another important reminder of the role fire mitigation plays in preventing devastation. Devastation is not only about the fires, it's about what comes next. It can affect water quality, can affect our roads, can affect loss of life. And that's one of the reasons this legislature and us have moved with $25 million for targeted wildlife risk mitigation, the purchase of a new Firehawk helicopter to respond quickly. We're putting funding towards forest restoration, wildfire risk mitigation, bolstering the Colorado Water Conservation Project, and much more. We're also working closely with our partners in the federal government to make sure that across all levels of government we can coordinate our response. I recently had the opportunity to join President Biden with other governors and key federal leaders to talk about wildfires in the West. And we also joined Secretary of Agriculture Vilsack recently to tour the Cameron Peak fire burn scar. And we had very effective conversations with him as well about that. I know this closure has a big impact on Colorado, on many Coloradans who utilize this corridor as a major passageway in their daily lives, to enjoy their weekends, to support their families through the tourism economy. And I can assure everyone that the Colorado Department of Transportation is doing everything in our power to reopen as quickly as possible. As we speak, we're preparing the paperwork for a state emergency disaster declaration. We are also beginning the process of the federal Stafford Act declaration, which needs to be done properly to meet the requirements of the Stafford Act. Highway 70 is an important interstate traffic corridor, a key artery for the economy of the entire western United States. We have some aerial drone footage I want to share with you, and we'll put that on the screen now. Thank you. We are now joined live from Glenwood Springs on site, Executive Director of the Colorado Department of Transportation, Shoshana Liu. Over to you, Shoshana.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you everyone for taking the time to hear an update about what's going on here in Glenwood Springs as we address the very grave situation in Glenwood Canyon. At the moment, CDOT is focused on two immediate areas of concern: removing debris so that we can scope the needs for permanent repairs, and a particular focus on sections of the viaduct structures where the parapet and scallop walls have been destroyed. Beyond these immediate priorities,
Thank you, Shoshana. My name is Stan Hilke, Executive Director of the Colorado Department of Public Safety. The Department of Public Safety currently has 3 of its divisions engaged in this issue with the Colorado Department of Transportation: our Colorado State Patrol, our Division of Fire Prevention Control, and Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management. We are currently in a unified command situation with CDOT, and what that means is that we take the powers of both departments and put them together in order to be able to manage this event in a much more efficient way. One of the things that's also happening is our State Emergency Operations Center is open, and what that does is provide support to the event and to all of the state agencies and local agencies that are working the event in the Glenwood Canyon area. That means emergency procurement, resource needs, and resource orders that may come in from any of the partners that are working on this. And I want to give a shout out to all the local counties and cities that have been impacted by the peripheral effects of this and the detours, et cetera, and specifically Eagle, Garfield, and Pitkin County, who have had a robust response in this effort as well. One of the things that the Department of Public Safety is going to assist CDOT with is, while they're trying to work on uncovering the debris in the roadway and assessing the damage of the roadway, we're going to work on problem 1B, which essentially is the river. Many of you have saw the drone footage and the debris that is in the river, causing the river to divert into areas that it previously didn't flow. What that means is that it's diverting up against the highway in some areas, causing more damage, or against the other side of the river that could eventually erode the railway. So one of the things that will be happening there with technical partners of the Colorado Water Conservation Board, the National Resource Conservation Service, the Army Corps of Engineers, and CDOT's engineers and other hydrologists will be doing a needs and damage assessment to understand what can happen with the Colorado River to make it less of a problem inside the canyon than it is currently. That means smart debris removal that has water resources and infrastructure in mind, and also transportation resources and infrastructure in mind, because we don't want to make it worse. That will be smart debris removal, and then with a longer term eye on what is best for the Colorado River and the path that it is taken down through the canyon. So we want to just say that we will be there. We will continue to partner with CDOT and work this problem to try to get the roadway as open as fast as possible and make sure that the public stays safe throughout the entire event. I'm going to now turn it over to Chief Matt Packard from the Colorado State Patrol to talk about what are the rerouting impacts and what are we doing to deal with that.
Thank you, Executive Director Hilke. And again, I'm Colonel Matthew Packard, Chief of the Colorado State Patrol. And I'll start by saying the Patrol has already shifted resources to the anticipated alternate routes that have been impacted by increased traffic flow because of the I-70 closure. We have additional troopers on all of those routes, and we'll plan to do that, keep that level of staffing, if not increase it, as CDOT continues to respond to the situation within the canyon. The purpose of that, of course, is to ensure efficient and safe flow of traffic through all of Colorado's communities, and particularly on those corridors, to have a quicker clearance of incidents as it might come up. But I would, of course, ask that anybody that's out there, and particularly on those corridors, that they are patient and they drive extra safe because there's extra folks out there. And everybody's going to need to take some responsibility in making sure people can get where they need to be within our state. We will obviously continue to work very closely with our partners at the county and municipal law enforcement agencies so that we can respond quickly and safely to whatever incident might come up along those corridors. I want to specifically talk to our partnership with the commercial motor vehicle industry as well. I'll start with the partnership that both the State Patrol and CDOT has with our sister agencies in our neighboring states. We're messaging to commercial motor vehicle traffic that would have otherwise transited through Colorado to use the alternate route of Interstate 80. And for those trucks and the CMV traffic that comes into the state, we'll use our ports of entry and in our partnerships with the industry specifically to direct them to those alternate routes so that they also can transit safely. I'd also like to speak specifically to our recreational traffic, particularly those folks that are towing fifth wheels and trailers and other things, that I'd ask that you check your routes before you leave for your journey to enjoy beautiful Colorado. Make sure those things are open and there are no restrictions that might limit your ability to cross over some of particularly Colorado's mountain passes. I would ask that you stay on the state highway system wherever you possibly can, and we'll do our best to keep those open for you so that you can transit safely. Specifically, our staffing will be increased on Highways 13, Highway 40, Highway 131, and Highway 9 to the north of the I-70 closure, and on the south side, Highway 82, specifically over Independence Pass, Highway 50 and Highway 285. But again, the key to our success will be for everyone to please be patient and do your best to travel safely. Thanks.
I know the top question will probably be when would Glenwood Canyon be open? I know the top question would probably be when will Glenwood Canyon be open for I-70? We don't yet know the full extent of the damage, so we'll give a range. I would say it's a few days to a few weeks. Best case is a few days, more likely getting into the weeks category. What does opening look like? It would be one lane of traffic each way. And it's my hope and my directions to Colorado Department of Transportation to get it open as soon as possible. That is also dependent on future weather. As long as there is heavy rain and hail in the area, we are unable to safely conduct the operations needed to remove the debris. So those will resume. We'll have more information as soon as it's available, but expect a closure for days to weeks, and then expect a reopening as quickly as humanly possible with one lane in each direction. Questions?
And then the next question after that was the top question, Governor.
Yeah.
The next question is, can anything be done to slow these debris flows in the immediate future or in the months?
Yeah. So medium and long term there can be. Short term, there's really no opportunity for vegetation or replanting to gain hold. We have to make it through this monsoon season. Once the freeze hits, it's less likely to be a dire situation. But we still are not out of this yet. So we need to watch this closely for the next few weeks, month, and it could get worse.
Governor Polis, when you saw that drone footage, you were describing Glenwood Canyon as beautiful. You see how it looks like now. What's your reaction to that?
Well, it's shocking for somebody who's driven through, dozens, if not hundreds of times throughout my childhood, through running for governor, through serving as governor. It really is difficult to see what's happening there. It reminds me of my personal experience with the 2013 flood, which really affected the area I live in Boulder and in Berthoud, destroyed our basement. I remember having to walk up to my parents' property. The road was washed away at their house. And so, in many ways, it's kind of a flashback for some of that. On top of that, this is a major transportation artery. So on top of the people who live there and the recreational use, this is also disruptive to trucking and commerce and the flow of goods across Colorado, which is why yet another reason why we need to get this fixed as quickly as possible.
Governor, and this is more a question, I think, for CDOT than anything else. You mentioned Highway 50 as one of the detour spots here. Highway 50 is closed Monday through Friday, and it's only been open on the weekends because of construction. Is there any thought to postponing some of that work and allowing the road to stay open more so that it can be a more useful detour, given that there's also road construction going on Rabbit Pass on the north side?
Let me see if Shoshana Liu can address that.
Yes, thank you, Governor. I can address that question. The project to which you're referring is the Glenwood Canyon project on Highway 50 between Gunnison and Montrose. Currently, the project is suspended until further notice, given the situation on 70. As we have a clearer timeline for the reopening of 70, we'll reassess impacts to 50, but we're very cognizant of the need for one of those arteries to be available to the traveling public. And right now, that project is suspended, so Highway 50 is open this week, and all of our messaging should reflect that.
This is another question. We were there in Glenwood Springs this Saturday. I was talking to some business owners. They're kind of getting out of the pandemic. They're excited for all the tourism, and then this stuff has been happening for the past month or so. And now you're saying maybe potentially could be closed for a few more weeks. What message would you have to them? They're missing out on some of these customers who would normally drive through. They're just 3.5 hours from Denver now. Maybe they don't want to drive that long, or maybe they don't want to do that 5-hour-long tour or detour.
Well, we're still expecting a strong tourism season over summer in the high country. Certainly this will impact the travel plans of some, but many Coloradans, many people from other states are taking the pass or enjoying other roads to be able to enjoy beautiful western Colorado. So this is a setback. I think what's really important is to get it fixed before ski season. There's more alternatives in summer for safer travel and scenery. And it's absolutely critical that it's back to fully functioning by ski season.
We're going to take a couple questions from Zoom.
Hi, this is Nathaniel Meyer, Colorado Public Radio. This question is for the governor and for Director Liu. Given the scale of this and what you're seeing
I'll just say that as we build out infrastructure with the new bipartisan state infrastructure plan, if there's a federal plan, and we hope that there is, that climate resiliency is at the very heart of that plan. And that means that we need to look at things like fire risk mitigation, retaining walls, in a new and different way, given the reality that we face on the ground in Colorado. Shoshana, over to you.
I would say that it's an important question, and Colorado is not alone in having to grapple with the intense weather events that can affect infrastructure very significantly. Whether it's the flooding that New York is experiencing, the heat impacts on roadways, Washington State has been experiencing record temperatures, or our neighboring states that are facing severe damage in burn areas as well. This is the reality of what we are dealing with. And I think to the governor's point, thinking about how we build in the future in ways that optimize for resiliency, but also recognize the powerful force that nature is, and the need to keep people safe first and foremost is something that's very much on our minds in all of the aspects of our operations.
Next from the phone.
Hello? Go ahead.
Gobernador, le habla Jesús Carrasquel de Noticias Univisión Colorado. ¿Puedes decirnos quizás cuál es la situación actual de los deslizamientos y las inundaciones a través de la I-70 y qué está haciendo para reabrir esta interestatal?
Sí. Ahora algunas partes de 70 están cerradas porque es muy peligroso y todavía no sabemos qué es destruido y no, porque todavía es cubierto con unos 10 pies o más de piel. Y necesitamos repararlo, pero todavía hay nieve allá en este valle. Y tengo optimismo que podemos abrirlo un poco en algunos días o semanas, pero necesita tomar meses para abrirlo como era.
Next question from the phone.
Hi, this is Jennifer Yakman with E&E News. I just wanted to follow up with a question about climate change. Can you talk sort of more specifically about what lessons you're drawing from these repeated closures on 70 for building roadways elsewhere in the state, whether it's about addressing wildfire or flooding or the after effects of those events?
Yeah, so wildfires are an increased risk to the west in their own right. We experienced that last summer in Colorado. There are some fire activity this summer, but we are directly experiencing the air quality across Colorado from western wildfires. With the burn scars that have been created by these three largest fires in the history of our state, unquestionably additional fires in the future, we also need to make sure that we can do the water work and preservation of infrastructure with retaining walls, strategic use of vegetation, and other methods that can be effective in preventing these kind of mudslides. When we toured the Cameron Peak fire with Secretary Vilsack, we directly saw the impact of how the silt from the fire was impacting the water supply at several mountain reservoirs that metro area water districts have in the Cameron Peak area. So it's about infrastructure protection, it's about water protection, and it's about fire mitigation, because of course the best way to prevent this kind of burn scar and damage is by preventing or minimizing the threat of fires in the first place. Shoshana, do you want to extrapolate some of the other things we learned about protecting infrastructure with climate change?
Thank you, Governor. I think one of the things that's a common thread as we deal with these realities is that we have some of the most beautiful landscapes surrounding our roadways in the country, if not the world. And the very things that make it so stunning and so beautiful mean that they're roads that traverse difficult terrain, and terrain where the extreme events, including the ones that the governor has mentioned, and the kind of combined forces of climate change put additional pressures on them. So places like Glenwood
question from the phone.
Yeah, hello, Governor. This is Vinny Gerald, Bloomberg News in Denver. What are the latest projections for wildfires in August and September? Are we at the risk of seeing more historic blazes like we did last year, or the risks are a little bit lower?
So we have a different team for that. We'll have to get Chief Morgan and others to give an updated briefing. I would add that these very wet conditions that are a direct threat to our roadways and mudslides also act to reduce the fire risk. Now, we have a significant drought in western Colorado. It's been somewhat ameliorated over the last couple weeks of record precipitation, but we do expect that the fire season extends over the next few months. So the water helps, the moisture helps, but it's not definitive in ending this fire season early, and remain wary about threats. And we'll be happy to give another update about how this impacts the fire risk across our state.
Phone. Let's go to the next person on the phone.
Hey, Governor, could you talk a little bit about beyond this year? You know, I think both CDOT and outside experts have said, hey, this is going to be with us for a few summers, most likely. What's your understanding? Is this going to be a diminishing threat in terms of severity next year and the year after and so on? Or is this delayed for a while right again next year?
Yeah, I want to highlight the really almost unprecedented amount of precipitation in a short period of time. The average monthly rainfall for the entire month of July in Glenwood Canyon, 2.4 inches. We had nearly twice that rainfall over 5 days. So it was a combination of the burn scar and the threat of the mudslides with a record amount of rain in a very short period of time. So there are greater uncertainties around climate, and I think we're all uncertain as to whether these monsoon rains occur larger and quicker, coupled with prevailing drought over the rest of the year. We simply don't know in what direction the climate is changing. But this particular event was a combination of those two. There likely would have been some degree of road closure, as there has been when there were mudslides and regular precipitation. But as you know, Colorado Department of Transportation usually cleared that up within a day or so. This level of damage is a direct result of the high level of rain that has occurred, coupled with the burn scar.
I would just reinforce that the amount of rain we've seen, to the governor's point, would have created flooding issues irrespective, but they're much, much worse because of the previously accrued damage due to the fires. We're also seeing flooding in areas on the roadway that have not had the level of fire damage that Cougar Canyon or Glenwood Canyon have, but the destabilization of the material due to the fires just makes the impact, to the governor's point, that much worse. But again, I think when we think about future years, recognizing how out of the ordinary this year is in terms of sheer amount of rainfall is important.
Next question from the phone.
Governor Scott Conant from the Aspen Times. For CDOT, in the short term, is there any plan for maybe getting traffic one way through the narrows on Independence Pass, Highway 82? And Governor, in the longer term, are you looking at any kind of upgrade to the Cottonwood Pass between Roaring Fork Valley over to Chipson?
So on the immediate question, it's best, I think, for Chief Packard, and then on the Cottonwood Pass, we'll go to Shoshana.
Thank you, Governor. So our plans right now in addressing the traffic on Highway 82, of course, is to strongly message for recreational traffic and commercial vehicle traffic to abide by the length and width restrictions that go over that pass, so we can keep traffic flowing in both directions to keep feeding all the communities on both sides of Independence Pass. And I think that probably addresses 82, and I'll turn it over to Executive Director Liu.
Sure. With respect to Cottonwood Pass, as folks I believe know, that's currently a county road and not a state facility. That said, we understand that it is one of the most efficient alternate routes available, and I think there's a long-term conversation about the viability of that route and how it plays into our discussions about sort of future transportation that will be part of the things that we look at moving forward and looking to the long term. But right now, we're focused on the
So we're preparing the state declaration as we speak. The federal Stafford Act declaration includes enhanced use of federal resources for helping to repair this artery, and we do believe we meet the criteria. We have to check the boxes and fill that out. Our goal is to safely reopen it as quickly as possible. It's likely to reopen in a limited capacity in a matter of days to weeks. We don't yet know the full extent of the damage because there are areas of the highway that are covered by 10 feet or more of mudslide currently, and we've had to suspend the mud clearing operations during the additional rain and hail that make it unsafe for equipment and CDOT workers to be in there doing the work. And so it requires decent weather to be able to do the work, and we're hopeful that the weather will improve over the next day.
To paint a little bit of a picture about what we know right now in terms of the scope of the damage, there are two segments that are close to the Hanging Lake Tunnel, where essentially the debris fall from, as I said before, often thousands of feet above, has fallen, severely damaging the upper deck, but even more severely damaging the lower deck. And we can follow up with pictures so folks can sort of gauge an image of what this looks like. The extent of structural damage is not uniform across those areas, but the damage is quite severe, and there's also been destabilization to the surface deck such that the area by the guardrail is not as strong as it normally would be because of the damage. There's also areas where the channels of the river, because of the extent of debris flow in the river and the movement of water, is sort of hitting up against the retaining wall that keeps the road steady, and something similar is happening with respect to the retaining wall for the rail line. So that's happening significantly in a number of places. We're not sure of the full extent of where that's happening, and frankly, it's moving target because the situation keeps changing so rapidly as the heavy rains continue. But that's the kind of damage we're seeing. It's localized in certain places, so it's not throughout the canyon, but rather intensified in those areas right now.
We'll do two more questions from the phone.
Yes, this is John Stroud from Glenwood Post-Independent. Couple of questions. With regards to the emergency declaration, I was wondering with the funds that would be available there, is there any economic impact assistance for affected businesses that might be able to come out of that?
Was your second question?
And then the second question is probably more for CDOT, but I'm assuming that when the highway does reopen, it would be more likely in a head-to-head configuration on like eastbound lanes or something. And then also, I was wondering if anything is being done. There's kind of a confusing situation down in Rifle where people have to get off of the interstate to go on to the detour route, but locals can stay on Highway 6 and then get back on the interstate to get to Glenwood Springs and up the Roaring Fork Valley. I was wondering if at any point they would be able to stay on I-70 at that point instead of having to get off on 6, or if that's going to be a long-term situation.
So we'll let Director Liu answer the second part. I would say on the first part that we always structure our state emergency request to maximize the deployment of federal funding. So we will maximize allowable use and successful deployment of resources to help, and we will be as creative as we can in doing what we can to support our local economy in that effort. I don't want to prejudge any of that. It all depends on what the federal government grants with regard to eligibility. We'll turn it over to Shoshana.
Thanks. In terms of the question about head-to-head configuration, we have not yet determined what the interim configuration would look like. We're actually assessing with our team a couple of different options, trying to determine the pros and cons of different configurations that would optimize first and foremost for the safety of the traveling public, but also allow for concurrent use of some of the roadway while we do the long-term damages repair in the other segments concurrently. We'll have more details on that in the days to come.
So, to conclude, the extent of the damage will be more widely known in the next few days. Weather permitting, we're unable to do some of that surveillance work as long as the monsoon rains continue. Expect that the closure will be days to weeks. We'll have a better sense of that within the next few days. My directive to CDOT is to reopen it as quickly as possible with at least some model for the flow of traffic, even one lane each direction, and then to hopefully restore full functionality by ski season to Glenwood Canyon. In the meantime, there's alternative routes being made available. Colorado State Patrol is doing a great job doing that. Other projects have been suspended to make way for those traffics. Our message to those considering visiting Colorado is Western Colorado is great. Please visit it, enjoy it this time of year. You can make alternative arrangements in and around to get to where you need to go, and we look forward to helping you do that as well. And I want to thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you.